All right, welcome back. Today we're breaking down another episode of Black Mirror, Hang the DJ. This is the Black Mirror rom-com. It's set in a world where people who live in a walled-off society are systematically coupled by a futuristic dating system, with the goal of finding your ultimate compatible other, aka the one. Every relationship you enter has a countdown timer, and when time's up, you're paired with someone else for a set amount of time. Eventually your coach gathers enough information about you to pair you with somebody they confidently deem a 99.8% match. And then you go on to live happily ever after. Or do you? The original idea was to have a Spotify-type playlist for finding love, where everyone goes through the same series of formative relationships before settling down. Speaking of Spotify, stick around till the end to learn the meaning behind the episode's title, Hang the DJ. We're also going to explore a fun theory about how this entire thing is potentially being ran by Smartelligence, the same company Matt Trent worked for in White Christmas. But more on that in a little bit. Let's dive into it. The episode begins with Frank walking along a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, apparently coming from a forest. And Frank is played by Joe Cole, who is probably best known for his role as John Shelby in Peaky Blinders. It's hard to see him as anybody else. He speaks to his dating coach on a handheld device and is instructed to continue to the hub ahead. He goes inside, takes an escalator up, and arrives at a restaurant full of young couples. He takes a seat at a table and waits nervously for his date to arrive. And that's where we meet Amy. Amy is played by Georgina Campbell, who I can only see as Tess Marshall from Barbarian, another movie I'd really like to cover. She walks in and asks her coach how she's going to know who she's meeting. And Coach shows her a live video feed of Frank sitting at the table waiting for her.
This is him.
So now we know this is both of their first times going through this dating process. Amy approaches Frank at the table and he jumps up to greet her, but clumsily knocks his fork onto the floor in the process. They introduce themselves and we can tell right away that Frank is nervous as hell. Amy can tell too, so he just comes out and admits it. This is his first time in the system. Amy says it's hers as well and she's just as nervous, even if she doesn't show it. They both joke around and tease each other to break the ice, and you can tell right away there's a connection. Just as they're trying to figure out what to order, their coach speaks up saying their menu choices have already been established. Turns out, Amy is a
Pasta girl?
and Frank is more of a
fish cake.
He asks if he can try her pasta, and in a surprising answer, she asks if they're allowed to do that, which raises all kinds of questions. Like what other crazy rules are there that would make her think that this isn't allowed? And why does it matter? If you start liking new things, does it mess up the algorithm? You'd think the more information it could gather about you, the better.
Fuck it.
Amy gives him a bite, and Frank turns around to see a combination security guard busboy mean-mugging the shit out of him. Amy asks if they should check their expiry date, and Frank agrees. The expiry date being the expiration date of their relationship, at which point they move on to the next person their coach has picked out for them. However, it appears that you can only look at the expiry date if both parties press their respective tap to reveal buttons at the same time.
12 hours.
That's not very long at all.
Bit short.
It is a bit short, isn't it?
Also, knowing how long you have completely changes the dynamic of the relationship and how you treat it. I feel like it's put there more as a test than a beneficial feature, because eventually they'll realize looking at it hurts more than it helps. But Frank doesn't see it like that. He suggests they eat quick and make the most of the time they have together.
Yeah.
They finish dinner and wait outside to get picked up. Notice the two rings joined together above them. I think that might be the logo of the place because we see it a few times. In the car, you can see the map on their navigation screen looks eerily similar to the inside of a phone. Series production designer Joel Collins thought, if I can't tell the audience we're in a phone, maybe I'll show them. And if you've ever seen the inside of a phone, there's a green plate with one big chip and tons of copper and brass lines leading to different nubbins. So that's basically how he designed the park. They drive past the wall of the compound and it is insanely tall, like a concrete version of the wall in Game of Thrones.
Was massive.
They get dropped off at their own private cabin where they walk into a fire already roaring in the fireplace. Now I don't know what you would call this metal fence separation thing in the background, and that's okay because the name's not important. It's the shapes we see that are important. Because, spoiler alert, it's the same shape they break up into at the very end when they float into the sky. And there's lots of little hints at it, so I'll be sure to point them all out, or at least try to. The cabin has a very simple setup. Living room with a fireplace and a couch, and a bedroom with a bed. The implications are obvious, and they're both nervous. So Amy goes to the bathroom, and Frank sits on the couch, far away from the bed. But Amy doesn't need to go to the bathroom. She just wanted to ask Coach what they're supposed to do. Do they just go at it?
Define go at it.
Funny enough, Frank is in the living room asking the exact same question, to which Coach says you aren't required to do anything. It's your choice what you do. They're just here to soak up the information. So Frank, being the classy guy that he is, obviously offers to sleep on the tiny couch.
It's not awful.
But Amy says the bed is big enough for both of them, and he doesn't question it.
Yeah, okay.
They both lay down in bed discussing how crazy dating must have been before the system. Having to figure out who to be with on your own sounds like a nightmare.
Option paralysis.
Which is real as fuck, especially nowadays with all the apps available. There's a bottomless supply of new people. And because of that, you're constantly questioning if you're actually with your best potential partner, or if there's someone else out there you haven't found yet. That can be a twisted cycle to get stuck in. So this system was created to eliminate that need for second guessing and pair you with your best potential match. They talk about how scary it would be to have to decide when to break up with somebody, saying it's so much simpler when it's all mapped out. They don't know what else to do other than awkwardly lay there and wait for their time to expire. So that's what they do. But eventually Amy reaches over and grabs Frank's hand, which brings a smile to her face. The next morning they walk outside to say bye, and their coach is beeped to give them a 20-second warning. They both say they had a nice night, and Amy follows it up by saying if they could do this over.
You would totally get it, by the way.
The timer beeps, the house locks, and they both get in their separate cars going opposite directions. Later that day on a run, Amy tells Coach she doesn't see the point to such short relationships. But Coach insists, even short relationships and how you react to them provide valuable information. Meanwhile, Frank is hiking, because if you aren't actively dating, you better be working on improving yourself. He asks Coach how they know she wasn't his perfect match, and it doesn't give a reason. It just says your ultimate compatible other has not yet been selected. You've got to go through multiple relationships before the system can get enough insight about you to pair you with somebody, which makes sense in terms of numbers. But there's always that slim chance the first person you meet with that 12-hour relationship could have been your perfect match and the system didn't take it seriously because it needs your first 20 relationships to gain enough information about you. However, the results speak for themselves. They advertise a 99.8 chance of finding your perfect match, so maybe it's best not to question it. Amy skips a rock on the lake, which doesn't seem important, but it's worth pointing out. Just then their coaches let them both know their next relationships are ready. They don't waste any time around here. On to the next one. That night, Amy meets her new match, and she's immediately attracted to him, but kinda goes over the top laughing at a joke of his that wasn't that funny. Frank shows up late to meet his date, Nicola, to find her already eating dinner with an attitude. And this sucks, because while us normal people have to deal with the pressure of finding, dating, and breaking up with somebody, it does prevent us from being stuck in relationships with miserable people like this woman. The second he sits down, she says they should check the expiry date and get it over with.
1 year.
Fuck that. That's worse than jail. And while they just met each other, compare their initial interactions to when Frank and Amy met.
Could be a mistake.
It is a night and day difference. Amy was warm and open, and this bitch is just angry and cold as fuck. She asks Coach if this could be a mistake, and Coach confirms it isn't.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Being the positive guy that he is, Frank tries to make the best of it and lighten the mood with a joke. But this succubus doesn't understand humor or fun, and scoffs at his attempt. And she really pisses me off. Like, why choose to be miserable? If you're stuck with each other for a year, you might as well try to have fun instead of being a negative Nancy. I'm not saying you gotta pretend to be in love, but if you both agree that you aren't compatible, at least try to be platonic friends and enjoy the time you have stuck together. Amy and Lenny, on the other hand,
9 months.
Lenny takes a sip and exhales loudly, which doesn't bother Amy yet, but whew, it will. They arrive at their cabin and we learn this is Lenny's 5th relationship. He takes a quick shower and approaches Amy in a towel, saying he's learned it's best to have sex right away. It helps break the ice and reveal compatibility, which on the surface makes sense, but it also just sounds like a guy trying to get laid. If you're stuck together for 9 months, there's no need to rush anything. And if the goal is to find a serious relationship, wouldn't it make more sense to treat everyone like it could potentially be your last? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's better to just do whatever you want so the system gets to know you better. I don't know. I'm just glad I'm married. Lenny says he consents to everything on his coach device and says she can do the same thing whenever she's ready. And it turns out she's ready because she consented to everything before he finished that sentence. They get their bang on and it appears to be going well. But I can't say the same for Frank. His dead fish is laying there complaining about his tikka masala breath before ordering him to get behind her because it smells so bad. Then she gives him directions on what to do because he's clearly doing it wrong.
Bit faster? More motion? Side to side?
Being the good sport he is, Frank does his best to make her happy and asks if it's any better.
No, not really.
This bitch. Karma always gets people like this too. Because the second she finds someone she's actually interested in, they're gonna hit her with the same attitude she's giving Frank. She deserves to be alone and miserable. Just go get 10 cats and call it quits already. Lenny takes a sip of water and exhales loudly again. This time Amy notices and mocks him. But he doesn't realize he does it, so he doesn't get it. However, we can see it's already annoying the shit out of Amy. Meanwhile, Frank is in bed staring at the ceiling, debating every life choice he's ever made that led him here. He checks the expiry date again. Still 365 days left. Literal hell. Even relationships that end bad started off good. They all have that awesome honeymoon stage, but he didn't even get that. Somehow he stepped into the middle of a marriage that's already been dead for 20 years. Ugh, just kill me. Frank asks Coach if he can get out of this relationship, and it tells him no. It's necessary for them to find him his perfect match. He and Nicola go to an event to see a couple meet on their pairing day. Frank sees Amy in the distance, but doesn't approach her, and she doesn't notice him. This is where we meet Mike and Edna, who were just matched and preach to everyone in the crowd how important it is to trust the system, because it really works. And this reminds me of all those Selma videos from 15 Million Merits. They show you an example of success to give you hope when you might actually be stuck in a hopeless situation. Also, take a look at their background. It's the same parallelogram shapes we saw before, almost appearing to be floating up from the bottom. And we see the connected rings again. At the reception, Nicola gives Frank shit for eating garlic dip, so he decides to shove even more in his mouth, 'cause fuck her. She storms off and Amy runs up behind him to say hi, but he can't speak with all the food in his mouth, so he tries to choke it down and actually starts to choke. Amy hits him in the back to unclog his pipe, and he thanks her by spitting up all over her shoe, but she's not even upset. They joke back and forth, teasing each other again as they both laugh. Lenny notices and comes over to interrupt. Amy introduces him to Frank, and you can tell right away he's insecure. He takes a sip of wine and follows it up with a loud exhale. Just as Frank says what a great couple they make.
Yeah.
The reception ends and everyone goes their separate ways. Except now on the way out, Amy is looking back at Frank the same way he's been looking at her. They both know where they want to be, but they're currently stuck in miserable relationships with no way out. That night in bed, Amy is thinking about Frank and grabs Lenny's hand the same way she did Frank's earlier, but this time it doesn't bring a smile to her face. Instead, it brings a Lenny to her face, who begins making out with her. And then this is the funniest part of the episode. He's going down on her, and she's actually enjoying it, but then... You can't do that. It's like you just finished drinking a Sprite. Ugh. When they lay in bed afterwards, he exhales loudly again. And Amy has to say something at this point. She points it out to him, saying that it bothers her and he didn't even know he did it, but says that he'll try to stop, only for him to stick his finger 2 knuckles deep into his ear and flick his findings onto the bed. Time passes and now Frank has 5 months left, meaning that Amy has 2, and ain't shit changed. Lenny's loud exhales are as loud and exhaley as ever. And let's be real, there was no way he was going to stop doing something that he didn't know that he did. Now there's only 3 weeks left for Amy. And pause it right here. Check out the design on the wall. It's that same shape again. The day finally comes for Amy and Lenny to separate, and he says it's a shame it has to end.
But end it must.
That was the longest 9 months of her life, which, funny enough, is factually true. And it took a toll on her. The timer runs out and Amy walks away as fast as she can. She goes for a swim to clear her head, and Coach says it's time for another relationship.
That is correct.
At dinner, they check their expiry right away, 36 hours. It's pretty wild that they either give you a fairly long relationship or basically a one-night stand. That night they bang it out, and while it could be a pleasure thing, I'm pretty sure her facing away from him is her beginning to disassociate. They go their separate ways, and Amy is immediately matched with another guy for 36 hours. She repeats the cycle and has another 36-hour relationship with someone else, each time looking a little more dead on the inside. They're just beating her down. Then the second she leaves that guy, she's notified of another relationship. And it pisses her off. She's just feeling used at this point. And while you're told this is all working towards your ultimate match, it's a pretty sick path you gotta take to get there. That being said, the worst year of Frank's life is officially over. And I don't feel guilty admitting that I was hoping Nicola would get hit by one of those self-driving cars right here. Frank gets a notification for his next relationship later that day and goes to dinner to meet her. He's looking dead on the inside now too. Those long, miserable relationships really take it out of you. He was always so smiley and happy, but Nicola sucked the life out of him, and not in the good way. But then Amy shows up, and his smile reappears. The system hooked him up again. They didn't even know that was possible. She asks if he's okay with them not checking the expiry. She's been getting nothing but short flings lately, and when she knows that's what's happening, she gets really detached. Like, really detached. She got up, sat in a chair, and watched herself get fucked by some guy the other day, and it was like she wasn't even there.
Yeah, that's pretty detached.
Frank laughs and says long term is just as bad. It's like you're a prisoner counting down the minutes until you're free. They both agree not to check their expiry and shake on it.
It's a deal.
Deal.
That night they get to their cabin and stand in front of the bed. They don't know if they have 10 minutes or 10 years left, so they might as well make the most of it. And they do. The next morning they wake up together, happy for the first time in forever. Amy makes a good point here, saying what if there's no real rhyme or reason to what they're doing? What if they're just wearing you down to the point that when they put you with someone you're told is your perfect match, you accept them because it makes all the suffering you went through feel like it was worth it? And that's a scary thought, because it could potentially work. I've said this in videos before, but the whole everything happens for a reason mind state can be really dangerous. When you attribute meaning to suffering, it can be a slippery slope. While it can help you deal with trauma, thinking that bad things are supposed to happen to you in order for good things to follow, that's not a healthy mind state for anyone. And then once the system beats you down enough,
You settle.
but Frank prefers a more positive outlook. He likes to think it's all real. And he says something here that caught my ear. He says the coach thing builds up a complex profile from all your experiences, followed by all your crazy thoughts, dreams, and weaknesses. So this thing isn't just a phone-type device with an AI coach built into it. It's somehow connected to their brain so it can read their actual thoughts. And they just kind of brush past that part. I got a theory about that later though that we'll dive deeper into. Amy jokes they could just be in one big simulation, and they both laugh it off. And this was the show's creator Charlie Brooker hitting us with the old double bluff, saying that if he mentioned the twist early on, maybe it would lead the audience away from thinking that's what was happening. Now, while everything seems perfect, because it is, Frank has that little voice in the back of his head just sprinkling doubt over everything. After being miserable for a year straight, it's hard for him to be comfortable not knowing how much time they have left. He didn't get burned out on one-night stands like Amy did. After something like that, it would become a lot easier to not want to see the date. And that's not his fault. I see where he's coming from after what he went through. However, after knowing what he went through, why would you want to risk doing anything to mess up the amazing thing you currently have going? The only reasonable answer I could think of is that he's scared to get attached to her only for her to be ripped away from him. Which is totally understandable, but doesn't at all excuse what he does next. That night after Amy falls asleep, Frank gets out of bed with his coach, saying he has to know their expiry, then has second thoughts.
We're shook on it.
But then he channels his inner Liam and makes a really poor choice.
Fuck it.
He taps the screen to reveal 5 years. He starts to feel relieved, like maybe this is going to work out after all. But then his device beeps.
Recalibrating.
It changes from 5 years down to 3. Frank begins to panic, and it starts to recalibrate again. Now it's dropped to 18 months. Turns out if only one person looks at the expiry date, it destabilizes the relationship. You don't both have to tap to reveal at the same time. It's just highly recommended, because once it's shortened, it can't be extended. It recalibrates again, down to 2 months and then 3 weeks.
Why?
Every time Frank asks what's happening, all Coach says is everything happens for a reason. But I think it's pretty clear he betrayed her trust. His device finally stabilizes with the new expiry of 20 hours. He really fucked this one up. The next morning, Amy wakes up, greets him with a kiss, and can tell right away that something's wrong.
You okay?
Frank says yes, but his face says no. They go for a walk by the lake, and when Amy skips a few rocks in a row, realizes she has never skipped a rock more than 4 times. She asks Frank if he's ever gotten more or less than 4 skips, and he doesn't answer. He keeps glancing down at his device, lost in his own head. He skips a rock 4 times and Amy gives him a hug. Amy's getting sick of this Debbie Downer routine and confronts Frank asking what the fuck's going on. He comes clean and admits he looked at the expiry. Amy's pissed. Frank asks if she wants to know what it said, and she says no. That was the entire point. Frank says it doesn't matter anyways, it's almost over. There's only an hour left now, when it was supposed to be 5 years.
So you broke it!
She asks why he looked at it, and he says because he really likes her and thought maybe they could overcome it. Amy's got tears running down her face now. She can't believe he betrayed her like this. But Frank's not convinced it has to be over. He says they should just run away and go over the wall. Amy says there's nothing out there.
We've ruined this.
Amy's not hearing it and walks away heartbroken. This catches one of the security guards' attention, who pulls out a taser to let Frank know he's not playing, and everyone watches as Amy storms off. Coach tells a crying Frank that the system will be gauging his reaction to the termination of a treasured relationship and adjust his profile accordingly, because, after all, everything happens for a reason. Frank's angry and says that he feels like jumping off the top of the wall, only for Coach to tell him that's against the rules and breaking the rules could result in banishment. Oh, and he also needs to leave the cabin before time expires.
Like I didn't know.
Meanwhile, Amy's in another relationship, back to looking like her old unhappy self, and still wants nothing but the comfort of someone she loves, someone whose hand she can hold at night in bed. She becomes completely detached again and is thrown into fling after fling after fling. The system is slowly breaking her down from the inside out, just like she explained to Frank. Meanwhile, Frank is going through the motions of a relationship of his own, where they spend the entire time talking about the mistakes they made in past relationships while having sex, then agree that they're both going to think about that other person in order to get off. And that's when the bed starts shaking for real. Amy is skipping rocks again, still tripping out that she gets 4 skips every time, no matter how hard she throws it. After swimming, she is told that her ultimate match has been identified, and her pairing day is tomorrow. After the ceremony, they get to leave here together, forever, subtly hinting at the fact that everybody you know or met here will be left behind, never to be seen again. She asks if she knows the person, and when Coach says no, you can see she's visibly disappointed. She was hoping it was going to be Frank.
Right.
But there is one last thing. Before tomorrow, she's allowed a sort of farewell period, where she can meet up with anyone she wants, as data shows this helps provide psychological closure.
Frank, I choose Frank.
Coach tells her they're meeting at their usual booth at 7:30, and Amy tells Coach,
Count to 4.
and if you pause it right here in the episode, she throws it exactly 44 minutes and 44 seconds in the 4th episode of the 4th season. She then skips her device across the pool 4 times as Coach counts them out before sinking. Now let's explain this just in case you don't get it. They needed to cast some doubt. They needed something for Amy to look at that would make her think something's not right here. And if you're designing a simulation, there's so many variables you have to account for. There's going to be some things you just aren't going to put variance in. And here, it's skipping rocks. Amy finds Frank waiting on her and they greet each other with a passionate kiss. Frank checks their time and they only have 90 seconds. He says his pairing day is also tomorrow and he doesn't want whoever the system picked for him.
I want you.
I want you.
She asks if he can remember where he was before he came here, and neither of them can.
It's a test.
When they met for the first time, they were comfortable. It felt like they had met before and would probably meet 1,000 times again, which is a cool little nod to the upcoming twist. Ever since they met, this world has been trying to keep them apart, and them rebelling together has something to do with passing it. They gotta go over the wall. It doesn't matter what's out there because they can face it together.
So let's go.
Let's go.
Frank's timer beeps and the two of them stand up to see everyone in the restaurant silently staring at them. The taser-wielding security guard attempts to stop them, but Amy isn't scared. She walks directly up to him and puts her hand over the taser. Nothing happened. She lowers her hand along with his, and the entire room freezes in place. She grabs Frank's hand and they leave the restaurant, passing people frozen in place as they run outside towards the wall. They get to the bottom of the ladder and begin to climb. This is another really cool shot showing how the place was designed similar to the inside of a phone. And all the lights below them suddenly shut off. The landscape begins to pixelate and disappear, first the ground, and then the wall they're climbing. Everything goes black, and suddenly the number 998 appears above their head. They're in a room full of copies of themselves, and they're all numbered. Suddenly the other couples begin to pixelate and fall apart in that same shape I pointed out earlier, before turning into orbs and floating up into the sky, revealing a giant digital coach device that numbers each couple as a completed simulation. After everyone disappears and floats up, it reveals 1,000 simulations were completed and 998 rebellions logged, thus resulting in a 99.8% match on Amy's phone in the real world with real-world Frank. The simulation we watched was the final one, rebellion number 998. The song Panic by the Smiths comes on. They spot each other from across the bar and smile, not knowing they've already met, fallen in love, and rebelled against an oppressive system 998 times. Now let's talk about cookies. In White Christmas, the company Smartelligence plants a cookie inside their customer's head to gather all of their thoughts and preferences, so then the cookie knows everything they know, such as how you like your toast or if you murdered your ex-wife's father and daughter. These coach devices do the same thing. They put you through relationships to learn how you react and gain information on you to build a profile. And if you want to compare Greta to Frank and Amy, they were all basically tortured to get the results they wanted. Greta with solitary confinement, Frank and Amy with bad relationships. I'm not sure who had it worse. And speaking of White Christmas, the concept for this episode originally came up during the pre-production process for that one. They were discussing whether a cookie's testimony would hold up in court, and Charlie Brooker suggested running 1,000 simulations with slightly different variables each time to see how many times they confess. They obviously didn't use that concept, so they saved it, flipped it, and we ended up with another banger episode about cookies. Now let's talk coach. This entire system was designed the exact way Amy described. It's meant to beat you down with bad relationships until you're so defeated you accept whoever it is they say is your perfect match. The people that we saw accept this aren't happy. They're just so broken they've convinced themselves that they are. They have to. However, they aren't really real, and since they failed the actual test, their reality just kind of ends. Now, where does the title Hang the DJ come from? Besides the song Panic by the Smiths? Well, that's exactly where it comes from. The Smiths wrote the song in response to a local DJ announcing an update on the 1986 Chernobyl nuclear disaster, only to follow it up with the song I'm Your Man by Wham! This was the first time the Smiths had heard about the Chernobyl disaster, and they were disgusted by the DJ playing such an upbeat song after announcing such a tragic event. So they wrote this song in an effort to rebel against corporate radio and the DJs who set the bullshit playlists. Pair that with the Spotify comparison from the beginning, and you can see how rebelling against the system for giving you a shitty playlist, thus hanging the DJ, is a fitting title. Now, a couple notes about the end here. The filming of the reveal was pretty funny. Georgina and Joe were on a green screen changing into different outfits over and over again, trying to look surprised by the giant void they were in, but also trying to look slightly different each time. Then when the cookies break apart and drift up to show that they're in a simulation, it took them forever to figure out how they were going to do that in a way that people understand what's happening. Plus, it's supposed to be a happy ending, so they had to figure out a way to dematerialize these people without making it look like they were actually breaking or getting squashed or something. It took them several tries, but they nailed it. I think it looks peaceful. And there you have it. That's my breakdown for Hang the DJ. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you like this content, consider joining this channel as a member. It only costs $1 and you're going to get early access to videos every week, input on future videos, and some behind the scenes stuff. I appreciate everyone who's joined so far, and it just goes to helping videos like this get made. That being said, if you like the video, please like the video and subscribe if you want to see more. I appreciate you guys being here. See you next week. Thanks for watching.